Date with a Debut is recorded and produced on Awabakal Country, and I pay my respects to all elders past and present and extend that to any First Nations people tuning in. Always was, always will be, Aboriginal land. On with the show. Welcome to Date with a Debut, a podcast about debut authors, their incredible books, and their journey to publication. If you're looking for a new author to discover or writing inspiration for your own story and you don't know where to start, this is the place to be. I'm Nick Wasiliev, host of the show, and I'm delighted to welcome another debut author in today's episode. If you enjoyed this show, jump online and give us a thumbs up, a 5-star review. It really helps the show out. If you also want to hear episodes when they drop, be sure to subscribe to Words and Nerds, or you can subscribe to Date with a Debut on Podbean to hear the latest episodes as they drop. Want to support the show more? You can also subscribe to my Patreon in the description to get early access to episodes, book reviews, recommendations, and a whole lot more. Wherever you are listening, thank you for listening to us and supporting the Australian book industry. You can also find any books mentioned in today's podcast down in the description. Well, welcome to Debut Revisited, a special series that jumps off of Date with a Debut, where I sit down with authors several books into their career and discuss their entire writing journey from debut to the present day. And it's a very special episode this week because I get to dive into a fantasy series that's ongoing. For today, I sit down with comfort show watcher, academia nut, vampire and fantasy lover, New York Times best-selling author of Immortal Dark, Tigest Girma. Tigest, you're in beautiful Nam today. Welcome to Debut Revisited.
Wow, what an introduction. Thank you for that. I'm so excited to be here and tell you about my books and myself.
It's a pleasure to have you. And for context, at the time of us recording, it is mid-September. Your sequel to Immortal Dark, Eternal Ruin, comes out in November. How does it feel about to... now that the book is there's a clock, it's counting down. How do we feel in this particular period of time before it goes out into the world?
That's an interesting question because this is book 2. This is the sequel that will be coming out in November. So my first book came out last year, September, and that was all great. So the experience is quite different with the sequel, especially because I am in the process of writing out the whole series of these books, and it's going to be 3 books. So right now, at this point in time, I am editing my 3rd book in the series. So I'm swaying back and forth between realizing, I do have to do more work. I have to keep writing. And then I switch off and say, oh, wait, my book is actually coming. I have to celebrate. So I'm constantly switching back and forth between these 2 extreme stressful situations, but one is more exciting than the other one. So it's always whenever someone tags me on social media or when my editors remind me that I sometimes realize that, yeah, I do have a book coming out. The problem with writers in writing a series of books is you never quite take the time to celebrate the book that's coming out because you're in the thick of editing the next one. So I'm taking the time to sort of remind myself I do have to celebrate. Otherwise, these things will just keep passing you by. So that's one of my resolutions for this year, to really take it in and enjoy the process of launching a book, because it only comes, once in a while and it just disappears.
You're not wrong. And it is amazing, when it kind of feels like, it's when you submit this book to a publisher, sometimes it can be 2 years until the book comes out, but then all of a sudden out of nowhere you're in the rhythm of it. It kicks up to you, and actually the moment, being present to enjoy the experience can actually be something that can get away from a lot of authors, because you're in it. You're kind of going through the motions a little bit. So it's nice to hear that you're kind of taking a little bit more time with this one to enjoy the journey a little bit more.
Actively reminding myself, really celebrate, reminding myself, because we're very humans, if we have work in front of us, we focus on the work instead of the celebration. That's just our nature. So it's very hard to keep switching off that mind.
Absolutely. So let's back chat a little bit before we actually go from Immortal Dark to Eternal Ruin, maybe even to a little cast ahead to book 3.
Yeah.
You're Tigest Girma, academic. You divide your time between writing and teaching. Fantasy writer. You like to explore dark, fantastical stories. You like Black stories, front and center. You like to explore East African characters and myths. at the risk of going with like such a general hard softball opener, how the hell did that happen?
That's interesting. I guess it's everything you just mentioned right there is just my life experiences boiled into one. Well, I like East African myths and stories because I am East African. That is my story. I come from Ethiopia. I grew up there and I moved to Narm, Melbourne, when I was about 13 years old. And then the other parts, the dark academia, the teaching part came about because as a writer, you always need a second sort of solid job. And my second interest besides writing was, teaching. So I got into teaching straight out of high school, and I saw how, that institution worked, as an educator, how does it feel? As a student, how does it feel? So I got really deep into that. So it's just a combination of all of these parts of my life coming together. And then the vampire equation of it came because as a teenager, they were the sort of stories I would always read and love. So I was obsessed with the Vampire Academy series by Rachel Mead. Twilight came through. That was a moment in time. Even the original series from, the Vampire Diaries franchise, all of those really came out when I was a teenager, and I was like really obsessive about them. So it was just combining all the pieces of me to sort of make one book. Just a mixture.
Well, let's not hesitate about it. Let's dive straight into Immortal Dark, which was published, as you said, in 2024 by Little Brown Books. For the risk of, I always like to hit authors with a classic elevator pitch whenever I'm doing this show. I feel like I have to stick to the formula, even though this is like a New York Times bestseller. For the one person who hasn't read Immortal Dark, what is it about?
Of course, it's my pleasure to tell you. So Immortal Dark, I would like to say it's Black vampires meets dark academia. So if you have those images in your head, you're pretty, good already, you're solid. But if you want more detail, my vampires can only feed on specific human bloodlines. And the children of these bloodlines attend an elite university in order to learn that, their blood is the one that sort of feeds vampires. And our main character, Kidan, lives far away from this society. She has no interest in going there. And she's living quite peacefully until her sister is kidnapped by a vampire. So she says, I'm going to go back to the society, bring that vampire to justice, and bring my sister home. And she does, she does go on that journey and commits a lot of acts that may or may not be good. So it's quite morally corrupt in that regard, which I really liked exploring.
Great. Ding, we've arrived at Immortal Dark level, and I would love to first of all say, we'll kind of dive into that a little bit, but the first thing I always want to say when I, talking about books and kind of giving your flowers a little bit is the world building. I love this is more my craft author brain talking here a little bit more because, fantasy, sometimes you can have stories where world building can be very, very dense. And not that there's anything wrong with that. In my own taste, sometimes I find that a little bit hard to go through. I remember the first time I tried to read J.R.R. Tolkien, and I just went, okay, there's a lot of backstory here to tell this story. But there was one thing that I absolutely loved about your book is, Kidan, the protagonist, is very front and center, but the world building is in the background of Booksley University. You sell it so beautifully. I could feel like I could, because we follow Kidan so much, I feel like I could just pan back from her, walk down the road and see the rest of Booksley University just sitting there. I feel the fog in the air, the cold stone, the age of the buildings, the architecture, the world of studying, libraries, the pressure of excelling in academia hangs in the air. There are secret societies, there are strange superstitions and traditions. And the best part, which always makes me very, very happy, is that it comes with a map, which I love me a map in books.
Yeah.
Tell me about fantasy world building. Tell me about creating the world of Booksley University.
Interesting. First of all, thank you for saying that. It's always a compliment to hear that you can imagine the world so clearly, because as writers, that's our number one fear. Fantasy world building. It's so funny because I started out this book saying, because it's technically set in our world. The university is in a contemporary world, our world. And I chose to do that because I was so afraid of high fantasy world building. I was like, that's too much world building. So I'm going to set this book in my world and get away with world building. And that didn't really work out because I decided to come up with a whole university setting by myself. And then it was just one question at a time because I'm telling you, I was so terrified of doing this wrong. But I kept having these questions, which is, okay, if these students attend these universities, what are the names of the buildings, starting off really small. And then, okay, there's going to be an education split into different parts. So this is my teacher brain coming in to play. And okay, we're going to have an art building. Okay, who runs that art building? Maybe one of the families governs that building. Okay, then maybe we have a house that's always associated with art. And now we've tied the families specifically to the education. And then now we have the music building, and then who runs that? So it was very fun in that regard, just matching the families to these specific education branches. And then after that, I started to think about what makes a very haunting setting. And I read Ninth House by Leah Bardugo. If you guys haven't read that, you should really read it. It's very rich in building that academia setting and the secret history as well. And I just kept wondering, how can I bring that into my own world? So it started off as just simple practices. Okay, can I describe this architecture in a gothic and haunting way while delving into Kitan's character? So it's always through her perspective. It's never outside of her. So if she looked at this building right now in her angered state of mind, she's depressed, she's looking for her sister, what would she see in this building? She would see something that's quite violent and dark. And it was just pouring out of her and onto the setting. So I really used her as a guide to world build the whole university. So like you said, if you had jumped out of her head and jumped into a different character, you could say it might actually be a beautiful place. It's just the way her mood seeps outward into the world building is, I think, what really helped me set that tone and make it more alive in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're absolutely right. It is important to separate, given this is, this book does travel down some very dark subject matter and paths. That's more the character and the journey she's on, not necessarily this world that you find yourself in, because there is lots of color and vivid texture here. I do want to talk about Kitan, but there's one other thing that I also want to pull from here, and that is, your love of exploring East African characters and myths. And I know, originally from Ethiopia, you grew up in Addis Ababa, and then for some reason, I've been the last 12 months of doing this show, I've found myself really drawn to books where you take, genre, where authors have taken genres and have added their own cultural context and play to it. Ryder Shah Edil talking about Muslim heritage and jinns and Malaysian culture in her book How to Free a Jinn. Nadia Majouri diving into the culture of motherhood in Morocco in her book Half Truth, which is just so beautiful. And even Sylvia Park going down technology and sci-fi routes in a dystopian, reunified Korean peninsula in her book Luminous. And this is something that I've found myself really getting drawn to, entering the world of fantasy and vampires, which is something that, kind of as you alluded to, growing up at a similar time to me, vampires were everywhere. They were really deep in the culture. I remember the days of Twilight and Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and that kind of entering into the lexicon and the zeitgeist of the time. Talk to me about the challenge of pulling from your motherland, your Ethiopian culture, and framing it into this fantasy lens, because this is one of the real joys of Immortal Dark. It's something that I absolutely love about it, because it's a peek into a world I don't know much about, which I love.
Yeah, I love that. No, that's beautiful. It was the best thing I could ever have done, because reading these books, like in the past, these fantasy books, I just wanted something to represent me, in those books. I wanted someone from my own cultural background, someone that even shared my skin color. I was not asking for much back then as a teenager when I was reading these books. So immediately, by making Kidan also have Ethiopian heritage, I felt such a sense of joy, and I knew from that point on I would always be writing characters that would originate from East Africa. And then beyond that, beyond making my main characters Ethiopian, I was like, what can I draw from? And I went to the history of Ethiopia, and I went to the food and the culture and also the myths, like we talked about. I kept reading about these things, and I also had lived experiences of these things. And I was like, how do I join that with the vampire lore? And that was a very sort of tricky process, because once you start researching, you can really fall into like a rabbit hole of research, and there's just overwhelming amount of work to do there. So I was really careful of not, like, I didn't want to get lost because there was just too much. So I kept the vampire lore, which is, okay, they drink blood, but then just I wanted to sort of highlight around that. I wanted to sort of play around with how they would die. Maybe instead of dying with a stake, I could borrow some sort of native animal from Ethiopian highlands. We have an impala animal in the native highlands that's, we sort of think is quite majestic. And I was thinking, okay, this innocent creature, what if the horn of this impala creature could be the thing that would kill vampires? Because, keep in mind, it's originated from that area. Vampires have originated from, the highlands of Ethiopia. So if it originated from there, what could be the thing that would kill this creature that has fangs? I was like, okay, an impala horn could be an interesting thing to add as a nod to that native animal that we have there. And then the fangs of vampires made me really think about, because we, instead of vampires, we have myths about lions and fanged lions. Throughout the Immortal Dark series, you always hear fanged lion is what represents a vampire, and that really comes from our own association with that animal. So obviously the vampire is represented by the lion, and the human is represented by that innocent impala horn. So stuff like that. I was very careful about it, and it's only sort of if you are of that era, if you are of that heritage, that you will pick up on it instantly, whereas an ordinary reader might think it's just fantasy world building. And I like that idea. Like, you have to be really researching deeper into the text to understand where I'm pulling my sources from. And there's also even Sosenios, the character, which is a vampire character. If you searched up his name, I don't think you should do this. It will actually spoil you, because even his name is drawn from Ethiopian history. So stuff like that. There's a lot of hints buried around the book, and it was just so fun. But one thing what I was careful of was not getting lost, because there's too much history to draw from.
Yeah, I can imagine that would have been like one of the funnest parts of it. But then also you've got to I've got to trim all of the extra stuff here and actually narrow it and focus it in. I particularly love some of the language in there. There's a quote that's literally on the very, very first page, which I absolutely love, which I think you set the tone perfectly with this book, which comes from the Amharic language. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Amharic?
Yes.
Amharic text, which is, darkness is a gracious guest. It eats at you slowly. Which, if you have any, which is the perfect quote, obviously Ethiopian origins, it's to start this book amazingly, because, I mean, there's a lot of characters in this story, but Hidan is the main lens. She is on this mission to find her sister June, the only family that she knows. This is why she is here. This is why she is in this setting. This is the driver of the story. And for me, it was so funny reading it and having my own experience of it, and then also seeing how other people reacted to her online, because for me it's quite clear why she behaves the way she does. She wants to destroy this bloody world to get her sister back. She can be, people, some people find her distant, cold. She can be brutal. She can be violent. She can be cruel. There is and there's even a very noticeable prejudice, as kind of alluded to, that exists between her and Sosenios and vampires. What I loved is, despite the dark paths that we travel with her, I mean, this is again my own interpretation, I understand, as twisted as it is. Tell me about Hidan, because she's a loaded character, and I love me some loaded, morally ambiguous characters.
That's perfect. That means you're one of my top 1% readers. I wrote her. I wrote her in a time where I was very angry and frustrated as well with the publishing world. Maybe that had a lot to do with why she's so angry. because I had come off of I think it was my third book being rejected by publishers, and I was writing the vampire book, Immortal Dark, and I was like, this is going to be just for me. I don't care what anyone says. I'm going to make the character who I want it to be. But funnily enough, originally, she was quite a nice character for like, I don't know, maybe 2-3 weeks at one point. She was more like Bella Swan from Twilight and Elena Gilbert from Vampire Diaries, who are real characters that are quite innocent, very shy, very quiet. And then this vampire comes into their world. And I read that and I was like, okay, I've seen this story before. So I wanted to do something different. I wanted to write a character that was not innocent, that might be as frightening as the vampires. And it's just a girl. And I was like, how can a girl be like that? What would make, a young girl commit such acts? And it came always back to her love for her sister. So I think if you understand that Kidan is a person that loves entirely and focuses on one person and will do anything to protect that person, all of her motives make sense. But if you can't really understand that sort of logic, then nothing she does will make sense to you. So I really focused in on that sort of love that can turn really toxic at one point because it will take over your life. So this love she has for her sister sort of undermines her values, changes her values, and makes her into a person she doesn't recognize. And then she can't forgive herself for the things she does. And this is where I thought was very interesting about her, because she's not completely unaware of how cruel or how, murderous she's become. She's aware of it and she's punishing herself. And I think that's where I can connect with her. I'm like, okay, you're aware of what you're doing, but then how do you grow from this? How do you sort of accept that you've done all these despicable, in quotes, things, and then how do you move on from that? And I think that's where I was just so interested. I wanted to follow her story and see how she would survive.
Yeah, absolutely. There is so much guilt there. It did kind of remind me of my days in academia. Not to say that not to project here a little bit, but the frustration and the loathing that comes out of it, and the stuff that you got to deal with when you're dealing with the system. That's just me, just kind of getting frustrated there as well. I mean, there's so many other characters as well, but I mean, I'd be amiss not to mention Sesenyos by comparison. Yes. Now that we've mentioned Twilight a few more times, it makes so much more sense now. Yeah, I can see. I did want to say, like, yeah, this is like, I do see a lot of Edward Cullen here, like a brooding vampire. Obviously, it's more complex. It's not just Edward Cullen 2.0, but like it's a brooding vampire that's hundreds of years old. Vampires, of course, as you mentioned, they're bound to particular human bloodlines. But he acts and kind of moves through this world sometimes with even like a playful energy. Kind of a youthfulness. But I think that's kind of off the back of someone who, if you're hundreds of years old, you've been around this world for so long, you look at it in a very, very different way. You look at people in a different way. You move through that. And then, of course, he runs into Kidan. Tell me about Sesenyos, because just the great foil, great comparison. And then, of course, as the story progresses, it's discussed a lot online. You guys know it. There is a romance element to this story as well.
Yeah, it's not a spoiler at this point.
Yeah, it's not a spoiler.
I had so much fun with Sesenyos. And like you said, there is a bit of Twilight in him, but more so, I don't know if you've watched Klaus Michelsen from the originals. He is a character like that's a vampire that's just makes you question all of your morals and values, and he goes about it in a fun way as well. So he was one of my big inspirations for crafting Sesenyos' character, because I wanted him to be so sure of himself and move through this world confidently, also while being playful. And I did all this because I knew he would be the perfect sparring partner for Kidan, because she would hate everything about that. She would hate someone that's so comfortable in his own skin that he would live and keep living for all of these years, whereas she is so driven by her guilt that she wants to, end her own life. And then he commits dark acts and he does whatever he wants and still, sort of loves himself. And she doesn't comprehend that. How can someone be so okay while doing all of these things? So it was just I think Susenios' dynamic sort of came from what would Kidan need sort of thing. And he would have to complement her really well, because I knew there would be a romance, and for a romance to work, there has to be some sort of, back and forth, and one has to teach the other something. And I really think Susenios would teach her, how to embrace her darkness and come into herself. And then she can remind him, to be human a little bit, to sort of not forget all of his good parts and stop being so selfish and maybe care for others. So I think they complement each other in that way really well. And it was just fun. They really hate each other for the majority of the book, though, which was also fun.
They really do. And that's one of the fun parts of it. But this is a great point that I love about this book, which is moral ambiguity. Toxic is the right word to describe a lot of their motives and narratives. But it's not just that. It's the sort of toxic where part of them really loves it. There's yes, there's guilt and stuff in there, but Susenios, he moves to this world and he kind of likes that sort of thing before he's kind of introduced to Kidan and opens it. And again, we go down some very dark subject matter with this story. There is parental abuse. There is violence. There are suicidal themes, as you kind of quietly, as you alluded to there. There's gore. You tread on very dark subject matter here. Of course, there is light in that, and it's a reason why the book has connected with a lot of people. And for me, I was trying to I always like to try and think about the strands that you've kind of tied through the story, and it's kind of a story. It's a book for me about family, about guilt, but really a lot about morality. How far would you go to save someone you love?
Yeah.
How far would you push yourself? And that doesn't just come in a family element. That comes in many forms. And how does one? I mean, the balancing act you provide is excellent. How does one strike a balance writing morally grey characters on the page?
Yeah.
Because you have terrible acts in this story and violence, but yet we understand.
Yeah, that's a tricky question, because it takes a lot of rewriting. That's the answer. I have a cast of other students that Kidan joins, and they all sort of go through, their own journeys, and they all commit some, interesting, dubious acts that you might think are unforgivable. But then, how do you understand? How do you always forgive someone, like you said? And it all comes down to understanding the motives. So I really wanted you to understand what is a trait. So often it's a positive trait in someone, in a character, that pushed to the extreme turns into a negative. And it's that point that always makes them commit something that they wouldn't do. So for Kidan, it's loving someone. But then, when you love someone too much, what happens is you focus on them only, and you don't mind, hurting others to protect them. So with the other study group characters, I focused on one trait. One of them is a creative student. He loves art. He's passionate about that. And nothing's wrong with ambition. Nothing's wrong with wanting to create a piece of work that the world admires, unless you're so jealous that someone else is coming to steal your spotlight. Suddenly, I understand you. So morally corrupt characters are very interesting to write. It's just finding that trait and making it clear to the reader that, this is good, until, suddenly it's not. So you have to, I think what a good person does is, whenever they feel that dark side of their ambitions take over, they have to step back. Whereas, corrupt people, they just give in to that. And, you sort of can't blame them, because there is a part of us, there's a darkness in all of us that entertains that thought in our minds, even if we don't act on it. So I think that's where you sort of say, he killed people, but I understand. And you're like, okay. It's a bit, weird to say that, but you're like, there's a part of us that sort of can justify almost anything if we really care about that character.
I mean, it's great for us. It's great for me as a reader to dissect. So I am not complaining at all. I have kind of a unique opportunity before we jump over to Eternal Ruin, which is, we've had books that have gone on. I'm very lucky that most of the time I get to talk with authors who are right at the start of their career. They've just released their debut, and some of them have gone on to become bestsellers have become successful. And with you here now, I actually have a unique opportunity to ask a question of an author that I have, that I've been wanting to ask for a very long time. Immortal Dark has sent you on an amazing journey. This book has gone out into the world and it's had a life of its own. And, you look at your socials, this book has sent you around the world. It's a New York Times bestseller. You've been to the UK. You've been to, I think you went to Spain as well. You've been everywhere. And best of all, you get fan art. Like you're at that level now. You're at fan art level now, which is just like, and I know in my head, I'm just like, you've been with this story for so long. You've had the chance, but now you've kind of reached the other side of it. You've had the chance to sit with the success of this book. And I'm now curious to ask, what challenges have come with hitting the proverbial end of the rainbow and actually finding success?
Wow. That's interesting. Again, you make me think deeply about my journey. I like it. Honestly, like, because you dream about, of course, like hitting the New York Times bestseller list, going on a book tour. These are quiet dreams all authors have carried inside themselves, for however long, and it's just been that for a long time. It's been a quiet, silent dream of mine, and then just out of nowhere it happens. And when it happens, you're in a state of shock. You're in a state of like, is this real? You're afraid that at any moment it's all going to be ripped away. So they have that good anxiety getting you going. But then, the months go by and you settle into it and you're like, you get comfortable in it almost. And you're like, okay, wow. Yeah, this is as great as I imagined it to be. This is fantastic. And you're full of gratitude. Like, I have so much gratitude in my heart for everyone that's helped make this book a success. And the readers, like you said, the fan art they're creating and everything they're making, like all of that adds to, I've sort of fulfilled one of my biggest dreams, which is reach readers. That's all I wanted to, in the beginning. And now that's proof in like you said, I went to Spain recently to, attend one of their festivals because it's been translated in Spanish. That was such a highlight of my, author career as well. And the challenges of all of that, I forgot the question. See, I was wrapped up in all of the greatness. But the challenges at the end of that is when you come back home and you sit at your computer and the blank page comes on, you're hit with this panic attack. Which is
same thing.
And then you go, damn, I have to do it again. And you're like, oh no. That is the challenge. That is the thing that keeps me awake at night. And you're like, okay, for a second you almost forget how you did it in the first place. And then that's why they always say the second book is really hard to write, especially if the first one does really well, because you don't want to repeat everything you did in the first one, but you have to continue the series. There's a lot of self-doubt that hits you out of nowhere. And the challenge of that is just how do you keep going knowing that it can get as good as you can imagine it to be, but even if that goes away with your second book or your third book, how do you still keep writing? So that's the thing I'm always sort of thinking about in the back of my head. It's like, okay, this is fantastic, this is great, but if it all sort of quiets down and your day is just writing, you should also be okay with that. So it's really bringing you back down to this level of just wake up, write, and then repeat, rinse, repeat, all of that. That should still be the best thing in your day, sort of thing, if that makes sense.
That is a fantastic answer to that question.
Good.
I'm not gonna lie, because it's nice. It's just nice to know that, like, because I mean, it's been a couple of years for me from my first book, and I'm in the middle of writing my second one, and it's not, you're not lying. It's hard. It does feel like, God, how the hell did I do this the first time? It is just nice to know that even New York Times best-selling authors have the same goddamn problem. it's
We're all the same, and that's so true. Like, I think one of the biggest things I keep learning is every one of my authors that I keep idolizing, they suffer the same way I suffer. So every writer is suffering, okay? They have so much doubt in themselves, but the trick is to keep going, like every single day you just have to keep writing, and that's all you can do. And the rest will come if it comes.
Absolutely. This is like a great segue over to the new baby, which at the time of us recording, it is not out in the world. Eternal Ruin. It's up on the screen for everyone on the Ubes of Tubes. It is set to be published in November this year. At the time of us talking, it isn't out, but by the time listeners hear it, it likely will be either just released or about to come out in the world. I have not read this book. I know nothing about it. I have no idea, which is, this is the first time like doing this show that I haven't had the chance to even check out a section of this book. This time here, out of necessity, I need to know what the classic elevator pitch is because I'm very curious as to see where these characters go when we return to Uxmalaka.
Of course. So this is the sequel to Immortal Dark. It's called Eternal Ruin, and it picks up right where Immortal Dark ends. There are big revelations at the end of Immortal Dark that you get answers for in Eternal Ruin. So to sort of pitch it without spoiling too much, I would say Kidan is trapped with a violently unstable vampire, and she will do anything to get rid of said vampire, including turning to a dark philosophical text that suggests that in order for her to be in control and powerful, she has to sever all of her relationships, all of her close relationships with everyone. And this leads her into a dangerous path, of course. And then we have Susenios on the other side of that, who has his own POV for the first time. And we get to learn about his own past and all of the secrets he's been hiding. And when Kidan tries to sort of distance herself, of course, from Susenios, he does not let go because he needs her to sort of master the house. And the house, if you don't know, is this powerful entity that they're both trapped in. And whoever masters the house first gets to set their own law within the house. And that can be very powerful. So they're both vying for that control and power. So if Immortal Dark was about accepting your own darkness, I would say Eternal Ruin is about how do you seize control and how do you keep that control? And does it come at the cost of your relationships?
Sounds morally complicated and terrifying. I love it. Let's do it.
It's very much the sister to Immortal Dark, like the different type of, if you just twin sisters, I would say.
Obviously, I can't ask any particular details about it for listeners that they're going to have to find out themselves. But I can ask you about some of the experiences that you've had in the lead up to this. You wrote this story. I saw you writing in Oxford. I saw you traveling the world. First of all, talk to me about. When I think of Oxford, you think of that classic institution, British style, beautiful old buildings, kind of probably eerily similar to Oxford University. Talk to me about writing at an institution like that, and that is being your place of work for this story.
It was so cool. It was my top 3 life experiences, I would say, because Immortal Dark was written in my house, in my room for, during COVID times where I had nothing to see except walls. And I was imagining this university with this, and all I could look up was pictures of Cambridge, Oxford, and Melbourne University even. And I was like trying to, visualize all of that. But to actually go visit one of these places, like I went to Cambridge as well, and just walk around those grounds. And I was proud that I was able to sort of accurately capture the vibe, capture the scene without ever walking these grounds. But it was just another layer of immersion that I was just like, if I have the ability, I just want to always write wherever my setting is, if that makes sense. So if I'm writing about, a beach house, I want to be by the beach. I think it just immerses you in a way. Of course, you have to be very privileged as a writer to do that, but I think it's just like that level of research is very important for us to really hone our craft. And even my prose was sharper and more detailed. In Oxford, there were some things I wish I had included in Immortal Dark. So like the ivy on the surface of the buildings, I never included that. I was like, damn, maybe if I had actually came here back then, I could have included that. So you will find ivy now in the 3rd book, but it wasn't there in the first one. So stuff like that, I kept noticing some things, and some things I was proud to say I captured well. So it was cool. It was very amazing.
That's so cool that the book, like one of the perks of having a book that took off and got an engagement like it did is that you suddenly now find yourself in a situation where you're writing in a place where this could metaphorically or in a literal sense happen. I'm assuming that would have really helped with like, you know, I mean, we've alluded to it beforehand talking about the challenges of sitting down and you've got to write a sequel and it's the same bloody problem all over again. I'm assuming that have helped made such a difference in terms of like identifying the challenges that comes with writing a sequel for yourself.
For sure. Yeah. It would have helped tremendously. But it's just, you know, sometimes it's just life likes to sort of play tricks on you, and you get to, you know, like I was by the time because I was writing the third book while I was in Oxford, and in the third book, like by that time it's like the setting of the university is already set. You can't really change much. So it was just, you know, the timing was a bit off, but I was still like very happy to know that if like so much of it was similar to how I had imagined in my head. So like walking the grounds, I could really see that I had already done that in my room in 2021, trapped, you know, during COVID time. So sometimes it was a confirmation of like, hey, maybe I am good at imagining things, sort of thing. Like, hey, maybe I am good. I don't need to be physically present, but it helps. But even without it, you will be good. You will be all right. You're a writer. This is your job. You can really capture an essence miles and miles away from that place.
That's a fantastic answer to that question, and you know, I know that listeners will want to check this book out and devour it and dive back into that world once again. As you kind of alluded to, we kind of were speaking about before we started recording, but there is actually a third book in this podcast, which is, of course, the end of this trilogy. Which, I mean, in your head, you've kind of said goodbye to Eternal Ruin. I mean, we're all about to receive it and enjoy it and lap in and dive into this new, amazing, twisted, all over the place world. But you're deep in book 3. How does it feel, kind of being in the midst of it, like a chance to just see where your headspace is right now?
Oh, it's a relief. I would say that it feels like a weight lifted off me. I say it's a bit weird that I'm in the middle of something else while launching something, but I think it might be necessary for writers to have that distance between stepping off the computer, send to your editor, and then the publication date. So last time I read Eternal Woman, worked on was in February. And now it's coming out in November? That's like a lot of months for me to sort of really step away from it. And now you could say anything to me about the book and it would not devastate me, sort of thing. I have sort of, distanced myself enough to actually appreciate and actually critique it with you. I could actually go page by page and tell you, okay, I should have done that or whatever. But if it had come out in February when I was so invested, when I was writing until 3 a.m. and crying and trying to, make everything work, it would have been horrific. So I will say it's quite a relief that it's coming out when I am in the mental state that I can actually appreciate it from a distance. I'm not heavily invested, I'm appropriately invested. And that's a good protection layer to have as a writer, because we're very vulnerable creatures. We need that distance. But right now, I am focused on book 3. And if you say anything bad about that, that will crush me. But book 2, you can say whatever you want.
I appreciate that. You've had, it kind of sounds like you've had the chance to just say goodbye. You've had your time creating that story and creating that chapter of this world, and now you've had the chance to go. I'm elsewhere now, and this actually leads quite nicely onto my last question about diving into your career, diving into this crazy journey that you're on, diving into the world of the Immortal Dark trilogy. You're a teacher at heart as well, in addition to being a writer. And so I asked this question: what has this series taught you? Be it Tigest the writer, Tigest the human, Tigest the teacher, Tigest the academic. What's it taught you?
Wow, I like that question. Tigest the human learned that she doesn't need to doubt herself so much, to the point that sometimes doubt actually gets boring, and that's perfect. That means you're ready to sort of move on and get to work. And I remember just with book 2 especially, it was every single day I would face the computer and I would just be miserable. And I was like, okay, I'm a bit bored now. Can we do something new? And that's where you sort of scrap everything you're writing and you go to the heart of what makes you smile, what makes you happy. And it's always that trick. You just go to what the scenes that make you happy, even if some people might say, hey, this is full of tropes, or this is full of a copy or whatever. You really need to go to what makes you smile while you're writing a scene and just work on that. So Tigist the human learned that. Tigist the teacher learned that academia is hell, but she already knew that sort of thing. She already had a sense, but she confirmed it with this book, especially writing it out. And Tigist the writer, she learned outlining is actually a good thing, because before I would just write different scenes and take my time with the story and let it flow. I was a discovery writer for a long time, and then I realized that just led to a lot of rewriting, which I can't afford to do when I'm contracted and I have the deadline. So Tigist the writer learned a heavy lesson, which is outlining your books, and then maybe you won't have to rewrite 5 times. So a lot of lessons.
I love that. Like, it focuses you up a little bit, which would probably be actually quite helpful in the creative process as well, which would be
for sure.
Well, I'm happy I got to chat with you today, which is amazing. Before we say goodbye to you for good, we always like to finish this show with a rapid fire question part of the date, where basically I fling a bunch of questions at you and you give me the first answer that comes to your head. Tigist, are you ready?
I am ready. Let's do this. I'm excited.
Wow. Let's do it. Okay, first and foremost, obviously because you write a lot, I assume that you probably enjoy reading too.
A little bit, yeah.
So my first question is, what's your favorite book that you've read in the last 12 months?
Last 12 months is Kindred by Octavia E. Butler, which is, if you haven't already, you have to all pick it up. It follows a Black woman in the 1970s who time travels to the 1800s. And she has to figure out first, why is she able to time travel? And it happens randomly, which is quite dangerous. And it all revolves around her own ancestry. So she has to sort of save this young white boy who ends up being the son of the plantation owner, who, when he grows up, starts off her lineage of ancestry. So if he dies, she doesn't get born, her ancestry dies. So it's a very complicated book, but I think it just captures, Octavia E. Butler really captured how slavery was just awful at that time, and how it also extended to 1970s and throughout to this day, even if you can draw a lot of parallels through that. So I really loved how eye-opening it was, and she sort of played around with time travel, which I always love in a story.
That's a great answer. Sounds like I've heard of Kindred, but I haven't read it. So now I have to.
It's really good.
Another one to add to my 4-meter high TBR pile, which is seems to be growing every single time I do one of these shows. What's your favorite debut novel that you've ever read?
Ever read? Yes. Okay, that has to go to One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. And that one, no surprise at all, it's a fantasy book, of course, and it follows it's a dark fantasy world, and it follows a character called Elspeth, I think. I really need to know how to. If there was a pronunciation guide, I'd really like that, actually. And she has a monster in her head. So this is a world where magic corrupts you, magic infects you, and she's infected. And there's a monster in her head, and she wants to get rid of him. He talks, he's very cranky. She calls him the Nightmare, and she's trying to get rid of him by going on this adventure through this dangerous dark world. And she realizes if she doesn't do it really quickly, he'll take over her whole body. So I'm like, hey, that was a good book. So if you haven't read that One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds amazing. I appreciate that, like, your interest in books also, like, there's a similar sort of like sci-fi fantasy twisted kind of like deep morality examination here. I'm sensing a pattern. Do you have a favorite word?
A word? that's ooh. I learned a new word recently, which was, I think it was a laconic, which means a man of not a man, but like a person of a few words. And I think that I just used it recently in my prose. I was like very happy with that. So I would say that one.
That's a great word. Laconic.
Yeah. Laconic, yeah. Laconic. I hope.
I have no idea. I've got to seriously get my thesaurus out and find like a whole bunch of words that you realize, God, that actually we don't discuss that enough, or we don't use it enough in day-to-day conversation and day-to-day speech. You get one day at Uxley University, like you're actually there. What do you do?
Oh wow! Just one day. Okay. I'm a tourist. So I'll be taking a lot of pictures because that's what I did when I got to Oxford. I take a lot of pictures. I like to sort of sketch what I see. I would sketch a lot of things. I would attend all of the classes on that day. I would go to the classes, whatever happens. And I don't know if I might go to the vampire quarters. They have a different building. And it's just one day, so might as well risk it. It's not allowed without invitation. You're not allowed to be there. But I would just walk in that gilded hallway and try to see what's happening in that blood courting room. There's a secret room that happens because my curiosity would get the best of me. I have to see if the vampires are actually doing stuff. So like Kidan was sneaking in Immortal Dark, I would be sneaking around in the vampire area as well. So yeah.
Your author bio says, in your free time, you can be found rewatching your comfort shows where the villain gets the girl. What are your comfort shows?
Oh, that's okay. There's so many. But where the villain gets the girl, well, kinda almost got the girl. Again, I have to say Vampire Diaries and the originals are those shows where the villain, well, in the Vampire Diaries, he did get her. Damon Salvatore wins. And in the originals, it's Klaus Michelson. Shout out to him again. And I really like those characters because they were vampires, and rightfully so. We hated them when they first appeared on the screen, and then gradually, as their stories told, the main character is pulled toward them, and the readers and the watchers are also falling for this guy. Suddenly, you were supposed to hate. So I just love a story that could take you from one point A emotion to like completely point B, and you're like, I don't know how I got here. So those characters and those shows.
Great answer. I love it. At the risk of being slightly cheeky, but I love to throw a cheeky question in. Do you have a favorite piece of fan art?
Oh wow, all of them. I'm not answering that.
Correct answer. Yes, well done.
Oh wow. No, all of them.
Off the back of that, you mentioned that your name in Amharic language is patience. That's what it means.
Yeah.
Has being a writer made you a more patient person?
Wow. Yes, actually. Yes, it has. Forcefully so. I did not want to be a patient person. I had no choice. There's a lot of waiting around in publishing, and you better learn to enjoy it, otherwise, because you can't do anything about it. So, writing a book takes time, requires patience. Getting the feedback takes time, requires patience. And then you finish a book, and then the publication date is like months ahead. Patience. So yeah, it teaches you a lot.
Off the back of Sesenios living for so long, if you could live forever, would you?
Oh. But am I able to die? That's my question. Can something kill me?
Yeah. Let's say that. Let's say that you still can die.
Of course. Of course, yeah. Let's because I'll stick around for as long as I want to stick around, and then whoever gets to kill me gets to kill me.
You can have your break glass and escape moment. You're like, yeah, I'm done now. I'm tapping out.
Yeah, right. Being able to choose, when you're done with this world, once things go wrong, you're like, okay, I've seen enough. I think what would be really difficult is if you're like invisible and you can't really, nothing kills you, and then you have to live forever. That's a bit, I think, miserable.
True that. True. And then final question: are you happy?
Oh, that's a nice question. Thanks for asking that. Yeah, I'm very happy. Are you happy, Nick?
I am happy. I like to take the approach of being like honest. So if I'm, if I have a difficult day, that's okay. Own it. If I'm happy, enjoy the moment, own it. But today, I am happy, which is
That's
good.
so nice to hear. Yeah, no, talking to you has made me happy. Like you've cheered me up even more.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm very happy, and the big reason why I'm very happy is because I got to chat to you and talk about your amazing books and your incredible career. I could honestly chat to you all day. This has been a hell of a lot of fun. But you've got a third book to finish, and you also have Eternal Ruin to get out into the world and promote. So I'll simply finish by saying thank you so much. It has been a privilege to chat to you about Immortal Dark, about Eternal Ruin, about Book 3, wherever that eventuates, and I cannot wait to see what comes next. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I hope you enjoy the sequel and the conclusion whenever it comes out. It's been a pleasure, having a chat with you. And I wish you all the best with your own writing journey as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Date with a Debut, and for listening to the Words and Nerds channel. You can buy all books mentioned in today's episode down in the description box, and if you enjoyed the show, drop us a review, leave us 5 stars or a thumbs up. It really helps the show out. If you want to hear episodes when they drop, be sure to subscribe to Words and Nerds, or you can subscribe to Date with a Debut on Podbean to hear the latest episodes as they drop. Want to support the show more? You can also subscribe to my Patreon in the description to get early access to episodes, book reviews, recommendations, and a whole lot more. Catch you soon! Date with a Debut is a Words and Nerds and Breathe Art podcast co-production.